let's open with a word of prayer, and then I'll start my introduction. Let's pray. Dear Lord, I want to thank you for this beautiful Sabbath day. Lord, I'm glad to be able to join the UK group this morning. I pray that you be with us this hour, these 2 hours that we are together, that you guide and direct our thoughts, the conversations we have, the study that I present. Lord, that we all may have an increase of knowledge on the character of your kingdom. We see the rise and the fall of kingdoms in this world as we are watching the news right now. But we also want to understand the rise in the character of your kingdom. And I pray that as we look to those earthly kingdoms, we can compare and contrast and learn what your kingdom looks like. And I pray that you give us an increase of knowledge on this, and that this hour of study may contribute to that as well. I pray for the movement worldwide, for those that are coming together in other places. Bless them as they study your word. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Hello again. I realized I don't have a translator, so I need to get used to that. I actually like to have a translator because then it gives you some time to think, and as you talk. That's not the case this time. Gives me some more time to speak though, which is also good. Yes, as you all know, I'm part of this group of speakers that is presenting the last 3, 4 months. I happen to be among this group. As you all, I hope, as you all know, I've done a series of presentations at the German camp meeting in January. It was a 3-part series. And what I presented there is basically what was the beginning of the work, the study work that I did. And I'm not going to repeat the details I shared there. So I'm going to do a review of what I did there, but all the details, I did a lot of reading. I'm not going to repeat it. So I'm going to assume you've all watched that series, or at least you're familiar with what I've been teaching the last few months. I'm going to review that this hour. I may add some new thoughts because the message has been developing over the month, and also my understanding has been developing. So yeah, I hope we'll have a good time together. If there's any clarifying question this first hour, please shout out. That's fine. If there's really like a question that maybe needs some extra additional thoughts, or maybe leave it for the last hour. I think of having a Q&A then. But if there's something that I said you don't understand, or if you want me to clarify something, please shout out. That's fine. So, as you know, we have several speakers with the Sunday Law message, and it all started with Elder Terry's presentations a year ago on the Sunday Law, where she pointed to July 18 or July 2024 as the Sunday Law waymark. Well, since then we are in a movement. We are in a cycle of studies, of discussions, People have stand up to promote that, to give their ideas, etc. But it started all a year ago, approximately. And Elder Terry's focus in her studies has been what I would call, or what Elder Tess actually always called, the Western Front. So it is a study that is watching to the United States as they have an internal war. They have an internal war within the United States. There's two parties fighting each other, so to speak. It's a concept that was introduced by Elder Tess in the Midnight Cry message, and where the King of the North fights at two fronts, at the Western Front and at the Eastern Front. The Western Front is within the United States itself. The Eastern Front is basically with the rest of the world, or specifically the fight between the King of the North and the King of the South. But it's how the King of the North demonstrates or relates itself to the rest of the world. So that's Eastern Front. So Elder Terry has been focusing in her studies mostly on the Western Front. The studies that I did in January this year looked at the same history, but from a different perspective. So I've been looking at this history from the perspective of the Eastern Front, how the United States demonstrates or relates itself to the rest of the world, and especially in regard to the King of the South. So as we are in, what is it, half of May in the meantime, so that is 4 months. I think it's about exactly 4 months after I did my series of presentations in Germany, because I think that was the 10th of January. Things have changed also, or developed at least in my mind, and I will go over that as well in this study. In my presentations, in my original study, I show that I think that 2025 was National Sunday Law, not 2024. That actually what Elder Terry was pointing to, my original study says that is actually Exeter. So I said July 2024 is Exeter, 2025 is Sunday Law. That was my original premise, or my original study. I've been changing my mind on that, and I will explain why I did that also this hour. But I want you to give heads up on that I have been developing on that in my understanding. But I first will start introducing the line as I presented it in January, because the first part of that line I think still stands. And I could change my mind on that later as well. But as far as I understand now, I think that line still stands, especially the first part of it. Before I do that, I want to go to a line that introduces 2021. So I want to introduce the line of the waymark of 2021. But before we go to 2021, because that's the first waymark of the dispensation we're looking at, I want to go to the history before that. I want to go back to 1989, and we see two powers. We see a bilateral world. We see the USSR and the USA, two superpowers, are controlling the world, basically. There's a Cold War. They are in fight with each other in a Cold War, not a hot war. But there's these two superpowers, and they keep each other in balance, so to speak. And then we mark here in 1989 And then 1991, we see the fall of the USSR. It falls. The USSR ends, literally, which opens space, the room, for the United States now to rise in power. And in this time period, we see speeches of, I think it's George Bush, saying we're entering into a new world order, where everybody was hoping we would have a multilateral dynamic in the world where several countries or all the countries are equal, or this dynamic. No, we saw that the United States started to manifest itself as a unilateral power, as the only superpower in the world. It started to use that power and started to misuse that power. And so here we can see the rise of America as the unilateral power. And I think Elder Perminder has also marked this, where you can see the rise here. This unilateral element, this unilateral power, is also an illustration of the rise of the seventh kingdom. Here it demonstrates itself to the rest of the world as the police of the world, so to speak, as the dictator of the world. It just does what it wants and ignores the rest. So we come to 2001, or we come to 9/11, and although America is strong, it is showing their unilateral power. 9/11 shows that the USA is vulnerable, or I will write down USA shows weakness. USA is weak. 9/11 shows vulnerability. Because of 9/11, we also see the USA respond, and it responds in its, well, it just continues this flow. Although it is show vulnerability, it starts to rise and starts to misuse their unilateral power, and they go into Afghanistan directly in 2001. In 2003, they will also want to go and invade Iraq, and the rest of the world says you probably should not do that. It's also in the United Nations. States and nations vote against this idea of invading Iraq, but the United States ignores it and goes anyway. And they go into Iraq because they believe Iraq has weapons of mass destruction, and they also tried to convince the world of that. They tried to convince the world with satellite footage, with intelligences that they had, and they went into Iraq. The same year later, they find out Saddam Hussein, Iraq, does not have weapons of mass destruction, and America loses credibility, because the intelligence services failed here in this case. They tried to convince the world that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, and they went in and they found out none of that was true. So USA shows weakness. 2001, it shows weakness, vulnerability, and as they try to use and misuse that unilateral power, they make mistakes, and they lose. The kings of the world, so to speak, start to realize that the USA isn't so trustworthy. So I don't know, maybe you can see a dynamic of the end of the world at the close of probation, where the United States raises itself again as a unilateral power, and then at some point the kings of the world will eat her flesh. I think you can see a little bit of that dynamic here as well, where the USA loses its credibility It's not that nobody wants to do business. It's not that the USA is completely gone, or it's still powerful and it's still the only power in the world. But when it comes to intervening into other nations, when it, in 2014, when Putin invades Crimea, so, Barack Obama doesn't dare to do anything. He's quiet. He does not intervene, doesn't do anything. People ignore it basically. Especially America is not intervening in this because of what happened in Iraq. America carries this for almost 2 decades with them. This mistake here and 9/11 and everything, the aftermath of it. They carry it with them for almost 2 decades. Because of what happens here, also the mistake that America makes in going to Iraq, topple a government, it is the beginning point for Vladimir Putin to realize, like, hey, if America can do that and they are relatively, they're not punished for it, basically. If they can do it, why can't I? Why can't we do this? So Russia, as it is trying to demonstrate itself as a democratic nation, just a normal nation as all the other nations, Putin starts to change that dynamic and becomes this autocratic leader that is going to misuse his power as well. And we see a rise of the power and influence of the King of the South. So Russia now is resurrected, or the King of the South is resurrected now in Russia. So King of the South dies here, it resurrects here. And that brings you to a point in these 2 decades where America loses credibility. It's not the trustworthy partner as it was before. And the King of the South actually rises in influence, first of all, in spheres of influence. All the nations that they are um, um, doing business with, politically, economically supporting in South America, in Africa, in Asia, Eastern Europe, to a level that even NATO is very unstable. Is very unstable, and to a level that NATO publicly talks about whether Russia is still an enemy, whether Russia is still a danger or a threat to Europe or to the world. Because NATO was started in the Cold War time period as a defensive alliance against the King of the South, basically, to the USSR. Then the USSR dies, and then you, of course, have this dynamic of, what's NATO for now? And especially when Putin stands up and does a good job in his information war, in his propaganda, because he is showing himself a trustworthy partner. You can do business with Russia. He is active on the world stage. So Russia is doing a good job in being more visible, being more active, supportive to countries. So they are building their spheres of influence, and they're also sharing their propaganda with the rest of the world, especially also the Eastern Europe or European nations, to a level that the European nations don't see Russia as a threat any longer. And it's publicly discussed within NATO. So 2019 we mark as the high point for Russia's power. This is Raffia. So Raffia is, we had several battles before. You have Beneventum, Heraclea, Esculum, Raffia, one of those. All those battles are won by the King of the South. It's this King of the South is always first when it's about information warfare. USA is really slow in even understanding that there is something like an information warfare going on. Although Tess has been dealing with that. 2019 marks the high point where Russia has big influence in South America and Africa, Asia and the Middle East, Eastern Europe. So you see the dynamic here when you come to 2021. 2021 is the year where we see the military buildup at the Ukrainian border. And now Europe is, the rest of the world is wondering what is going on. And Putin says, oh, no, no worries. This is just military training. Don't be worried. This is just military training. We're not going to invade. And we come to a point in 2021 in October where intelligence services of the United States start to realize and start to share that with President Biden that it is serious. The situation in Russia and Ukraine is serious to a level that they understand that Putin is going to invade. It's going to be serious. It's going to be a serious invasion from both the north to take Kiev, topple the government, and from the east to take a big chunk of Ukraine off and annex it into Russia. So to a way that Ukraine would become just a small, insignificant country that has a pro-Russian government. That's the idea of Putin, and that's the information they have in October 2021. So now Biden has this problem or this dilemma. Is he going to do the same thing as Barack Obama did in 2014? Just do nothing and just leave it, not intervene because we don't want to make the same mistake as almost 20 years ago? Or should we do something? Well, Biden decides to do something, but the problem is the problem that has developed in those 20 years. First of all, America lost credibility. So everything America says, which comes from the intelligence services, when it's about intervening into somebody else's business, should we listen to the United States? Is it really trustworthy what America shares? And secondly, Putin has done a good job in sharing or giving a good picture of Russia and himself. So even America, first of all, should we trust America in what they say? And secondly, if they say something about Putin and Russia, is that actually true? Because Russia isn't so bad, right? It isn't so evil as we thought, because that was the message, that was the narrative of those 20 years. And that was the dilemma, that was the problem Biden dealt with in 2021. But he decided to step up and do something anyway. And that brings us to, let me see. That brings me to the next line. The 2021 starts in February and ends in October. On this, when we look at this Eastern Front story, February, the rise of the reason why Putin starts a military buildup is in response of what Biden and Zelensky do in February. I'm not going into that. I shared that earlier, but it's about arresting an oligarch in Ukraine, a pro-Russian oligarch. Television stations are shut down. It's the beginning of an information warfare within a cleansing of fake news. within Ukraine and of corruption. So the King of the North instigates this. It is America that says to Zelensky, hey, maybe you should do something about your corruption. And Zelensky then, in response to that, takes down this oligarch, which is a close personal friend of Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin says, all right, we can't tolerate this. And they start to have they start a military buildup in March or February, March. But that leads all the way to October, and this is the point where the King of the North is taking this decision. We're going to do something. We're going to intervene. We are going to, in all those almost 20 years, you see that the King of the South is in control in the information war. The King of the South is constantly winning, is constantly first, is constantly winning the narrative, basically. And Biden says, we're going to change that. October, he takes a decision. We're going to do something about this. So Biden takes initiative, and you can see the flipping of positions here, where Biden takes control of the situation, is going to dominate the narrative, is going to share information, is going to I shared several examples earlier in Germany of false flag operations that are, how do you say that, debunked by Biden. They share information ahead, so before Putin could even do something, they already shared it. So the United States already shared the information of something that Putin was about to do, and because it was shared, Putin wasn't able to do it. So you could see that it was really a unique situation of an intelligence operations from the United States, which is also shared in articles and in the news, that it was a unique situation, and which we haven't seen since at least 20 years. So you could see Biden taking control of the situation, and where you have now these two world powers again, the bilateral world powers, world dynamic. You could see that the USA takes control here in 2021. There is this flipping of the coin, or of positions. So 2021 October, Biden starts to tell the world, don't trust Putin. Putin is going to invade Iraq. It's going to be a full-scale invasion. It's going to topple the government. It goes into Kiev. It's going to take a big chunk of Ukraine in the east and in the south. That was basically the information Biden had, and started to share that step by step with their allies. Well, their allies had, of course, the problem that they weren't so sure what to do with the information. They didn't really believe it. Even Ukraine themselves did not believe the information shared by America until the day of the invasion. Then the panic broke out, and they realized, oh, this is real. So that was February 2022. So 2021 is the beginning of the rise of the Seventh Kingdom, is also the beginning of the fall of the King of the South. We've always marked these lines like these. So 2021, on this study, or on this Eastern Front level, we can see what the problem with 2021 is, that you can't really see that, and that's of course always with a Boston, that the fall of the King of the South in 2021, or even perhaps the rise of the Seventh Kingdom in this dynamic between the King of the North and the King of the South, isn't really visible. So I'm going to say it's invisible because it's a Boston. Because it's a Boston, and a Boston is what marks the beginning of a new dispensation and a new time period. But the element of that dispensation, the important element, you can't really see it. You only can see it here. Here you can see the problem, the issue of the dispensation, so to speak. So I'm suggesting that the increase of knowledge, so the concord, of that dispensation is 2022 and starts in February and ends in September. So there is a few dates or a few events that I want to highlight. I guess there's more you could discuss and add to this story. It's of course the invasion, which I'm not going to write down on the board, but the invasion is of course the important event because that opens the eyes of the rest of the world. Because most of the people did not believe Joe Biden and the message that he shared. He was defeating in an information war the King of the South, but it was only recognized by the rest of the world and basically given credits for here in February. So I'm going to say, I'm going to start with the 21st of February. The 21st of February, we see a declaration. Maybe I'll do it a little different. So the 21st and the 30th. No. 25th, sorry. The 25th of February, we're going to look at the 30th of September and again the 30th of September. So three dates, 4 events. I'm going to write them down here. So the 21st. It's still visible? Yeah, okay. The 21st of February is the declaration of independence, the Donbas region. So there's the Donbas region, the eastern provinces of Ukraine. And Vladimir Putin on February 21st declares those provinces as independent states. So they don't belong to Ukraine according to him. So that's what he does at the 21st. And then 3 days later, on the 24th, he invades those provinces and also the north and wants to take Kiev. So 21st, he declares those independent. Then the invasion happens in the 24th, and then the 25th. Several things happen. The NATO comes together. This is the day after the invasion, and now NATO is in panic because there's a war at the European continent. So in an emergency summit online, because it's also a COVID time period, and because it needs to be done quickly, it was an emergency summit. They came online together and discussed the situation in Ukraine. And suddenly NATO was united and they all realized, oh, Biden was right. Oh, Russia is actually a threat. So where NATO was very unstable before this invasion made NATO very united and brought NATO into concord. So that's why I mark concord here as well. So NATO is one thing. On the 25th, also the United Nations Security Council comes together. So that's one I want to highlight here. It's the United Nations Security Council. They come together for a resolution against the invasion. The resolution says basically the invasion in Ukraine is illegal and should immediately stop. Russia should pull back their military immediately. So the United Nations Security Council is a council of the United Nations. It consists out of 15 countries. 5 of those countries are permanent members. The permanent members are the United States and Russia, China, UK, and France. These are the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. The other 10 members are rotating every year or every second year. So they are rotating members. Those 5 permanent members, so the Security Council comes together when there is security issues in the world that are, how do you say that? That there is security issues, wars, or perhaps even famine, or issues that need to be dealt with within the United Nations. The Security Council comes together and they have a vote on whether the United Nations should do something, to whether an event or a certain war or a certain country should stop doing something. So in this case, Russia was called to stop the invasion. It was illegal. The Security Council, when they come together, they vote on an issue. In this case, it was Russia. But those 5 members, they have veto power. That means if one of those 5 countries says no to a resolution, the resolution is not adopted. So maybe all of the 14 nations are for and one says no, it is not adopted. That power, only do the 5 permanent members of the Security Council have that power. So in this case, the United Nations Security Council comes together over the Ukrainian or the Russian invasion in Ukraine. And in this case, Russia vetoes the resolution. So Russia vetoes. Russia says no. We say we are against this resolution. So the resolution is not adopted. So the United Nations Security Council officially doesn't denounce the, if that's a word or if that's a correct word, denounce the invasion of Ukraine, because Russia vetoes it. The problem is that the rules of the United Nations Charter, which is basically the constitution of the United Nations, it contains all the rules and regulations of how the United Nations operates. According to the rules therein, it says that, so in Article 27, Article 27 is about the voting system of the Security Council. It consists out of 3 bullets, and the first 2 are more introductory bullets, and the third one is about, well, if the United Nations Security Council comes together and they vote on a security issue, the 5 member states have veto power, the others not. And it also says if a state is part of the issue, this state or this nation is not allowed to vote, to participate in the vote. So in this case, Russia is part of the issue, and actually, according to the rules, should not be part of the voting. They're not allowed to vote, but they do that anyway, and they veto it even. So that is Article 27.3. So Article 27.3 is broken. So we have a 273 with a dot in between, a 273 here, if you like. So this is 273. This is actually the 273 waymark that Elder Tess introduced in her X27 and Pyrrhus studies. It was between Panium and the Sunday Law. At this increase of knowledge, the symbol 273 was prominently there. It was actually the hook that was used to even get to the Pyrrhus studies, to get from X27 to Pyrrhus. The number 273 was the hook that was used. It was the beginning point. And 273 marks the point where Egypt sends its ambassadors to Rome because of what happened at Beneventum. Here, 2021 is Beneventum. This is where Pyrrhus is defeated by the Roman armies. Pyrrhus flees the Italian continent, so to speak, the Italian peninsula. It goes back to Pyrrhus. Pyrrhus is defeated. So when the news of that defeat gets to Egypt, Egypt realizes like, oh, this Rome is a significant power. Pyrrhus is defeated. Pyrrhus was known as a good warrior. And now the rest of the world, or Egypt realizes Rome is we need to give credit to Rome, basically. We want to establish diplomatic relations with this power, with this new power, you could say. Because Rome back in the day was a rising new power, and Egypt wanted to start diplomatic relations with Rome. And they did that in 273. They sent their ambassadors to Rome because of what happened here. And I think that dynamic we have here as well in this waymark into 2022, where after the invasion, the rest of the world realized that what actually happened here, the defeat of the King of the South of 2021, which was an information warfare, was only realized by the rest of the world here. It started after the invasion. The rest of the world realized Joe Biden was right. And it was actually a good thing. The things that America did here in this time period in October and after that. So this Egypt sending ambassadors to Rome dynamic, I think, is very nicely demonstrated here as well. I want to go to, I get back there. I want to go to the September waymark. So we go to the 30th of September. So February, the war starts. Putin thinks we run into this country. We have Kiev in a few days. We have those provinces in the east in a few weeks, and then it's done and dusted. But it doesn't happen that way. It takes months and months. And now we know it's years and years, but here it takes months. The conquering of territory goes very slow. Even the conquering of Kiev even fails after a few weeks. Putin pulls out his army in the north, and they only focus on the east and the south now. But instead of taking that in weeks, it takes months and months and months, and the progress of taking territory goes very slow. And it comes to a point in August where Ukraine starts a counteroffensive. And instead of winning territory into Ukraine, Russia loses territory on Ukraine. So Ukraine is winning territory back now. So now Putin starts to realize like, oh, this is hopeless. This is a nightmare. This isn't going as I wanted it. So instead of well, in September, he realizes that, and he thinks, I need to do something. And he starts to organize a big party in Moscow. So there's this big party in Moscow on the 30th. and we mark there the annexation of those eastern provinces. So on the 21st, those provinces are declared independent. On the 30th of September, he annexes those provinces into Russia. The problem is, though, that at that point when it's happening, Ukraine is even winning territory back from the Russians. The Russians do not even have that territory. Part of it, but definitely not all. So an annexation of the Donbass. So since this time period, when you go to school in Russia and you see a map of Russia, those provinces, that part of Ukraine is part of Russia. It's the most normal thing now to see a map of Russia in Russia where those provinces are part of Russia. It's just a fact for them. It's part of the education now, it's part of the maps. This is how the Russians look at Russia at the moment. But in reality, they don't even own it. The soldiers are not even there. But that's what they tell the rest of the world, but at least they tell their own people. At the same day, the 30th of September, the United Nations Security Council comes together again. There is a resolution that says the referenda that took place, because a few days before there were some referenda in those eastern provinces, which were fully a scam, were fully illegal. And that's what the resolution says. The resolution says the annexation of those provinces and the referenda that took place are completely illegal, and we will not recognize this annexation. And Russia vetoes this resolution. Again, so Article 27.3 is broken again. And interestingly enough, this September the 30th is also the 273rd day of that year. So we have a bookend of 273, 273. We have a world coming into concord. We have a NATO into concord. We have, I've showed a video clip in January where you can see that the United Nations Security Council stands up after this resolution is vetoed by Russia. And all the nations stand there together with the United States and say, we cannot allow Russia to veto this resolution, and we cannot allow Russia to annex or to go into Ukraine. So the world stands up together with the United States, and they give credit to what has been done here, and the world now comes into concord and realizes what was done by Joe Biden here was actually correct. And you can see now it is recognized where America lost its credibility here and Russia dominated the narrative. That is flipped here. The narrative has been changed. Joe Biden has dominated the narrative since 2021, and if I can say it that way, Putin is the loser here, is the idiot, you could say. And the rest of the world realizes that there is heavy sanctions on Russia. Of course, there is some nations that are still working with Russia, but that will change as we go down the line. I would think. The other thing is, here at the increase of knowledge, you start to see the problem, you start to see the issue, you start to see the rise of the King of the North, of America, but especially the fall of the King of the South. You can see that Putin brought himself into a problem here. And this problem here is a problem he cannot solve on his own. And what becomes clear here is that the only one that can solve this problem is the King of the North. I also want to make clear that when we look at this war, we should not be so much focused on this war in Ukraine as a conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Prophetically speaking, we say this is a war, this is a proxy war between the King of the North and the King of the South. And people now have issues with what is happening in the news right now about what Donald Trump is doing and giving credits to Putin and wants to give territory to Putin. I don't think that is a problem. It doesn't make Putin a winner because Trump is the one giving the orders. Trump is the one giving the orders in this whole, and I'm talking then down the line, that's not here the case, but you can see the problem starts here. And here in September, you can see the stalemate. There is this war that is not really going forward, not really going backward. It goes up and down a little bit. But since then, the situation since September and today hasn't not significantly changed. Of course, there has been made some progress here and there a little bit, going forth, going backwards. But since then, nothing has changed. And so you can see the problem here. And the only one who can solve that problem is the King of the North. They can intervene and solve this. So this is the beginning of the line as I presented it in Germany. The other two waymarks that I presented in Germany are not the same anymore. So I'll start with so back in January, I presented this as being July to November 2024. And that was, of course, a challenging date because what I said July to November 2024, as Exeter, Elder Terry marked it as the Sunday law. So today I'll write down July to November 2024 here. And I'll write down here March 8th, 2024. So what happens is behind the scenes, so to speak, Donald Trump is rising into power, but does not have power. But he is rising into that. In 2022, he announces that he is going to run for president again, and he becomes more visible, more vocal on his opinions about what is happening in the world, and he is vocal about the fact that he would have stopped the war in a day. He has a plan to stop this war, etc., etc. But he can't really do anything. So he starts to work with people that have some power. So on March 8th, he meets with Viktor Orban. They meet. They have a meeting in Florida, and they talk about the issues in Hungary and the issues in Ukraine, the issues in America. They have their political a diplomatic contact or contact as friends. It's actually special because Trump is not in an official position there, but Orban, as a president of Hungary, visits Trump anyway. He's not going to visit Biden, and he's going to visit Trump. And they have Trump has a plan on Ukraine. He shares that with, I don't know if he shares it in detail with Orban, but they agree that something needs to be done and that peace talks should start, negotiations should start, etc. But because Trump is not in a position of power, and Orban is, Orban becomes the puppet of Trump. So in July, and then that's the next step. So we can see here plans are made. Orban and Trump make their plans to visit or to start doing something and start doing introducing negotiations and the negotiations process. So in July, Viktor Orban will become the president of the European Council, or not like a super high position. It's a council which, in my words, is in Europe and not very significant council, but he is president for 6 months. So this council has a president every 6 months. It's a rotating position. So I think Poland or Belgium had it from January to July, and then July the 1st, Viktor Orban would become the president since July, from July to end of December. When you are in a position when you have that position, you will do that as a nation. Actually, as a person, you don't own that. You don't have that position. It's actually as a country you have that position. So this council sometimes comes together with leaders from foreign affairs. Then the minister of foreign affairs will be the leader of that council, the Hungarian. So it's the presidency is not even owned by Orban himself, but by Hungary. But he takes that opportunity to take this position and misuses it basically to do work that is not in agreement with that position of president. He goes to Putin. So in July, Orban goes to Putin, and in November we see Trump, who is elected in November 5, on November 7 has a phone call with Putin. So here in July, when Orban visits Putin, Orban introduces the idea from, hey, shouldn't we have peace talks? Shouldn't we have negotiations? Shouldn't we have ceasefire? These are the things that he introduces to Putin, and Putin is willing to talk about that. So I'll write down King of the North, start to talk with Putin. King of the North, I wrote Putin. King of the North, Orban here is the puppet of Trump. It starts with Orban, it ends with Trump having phone calls or visiting Putin and introducing the idea of negotiations and peace talk and a ceasefire. In this phone call here in November, they agree, Putin and Trump, they talk with each other, they say, hey, ceasefire. Trump says, I'm not in a position at the moment. In January, we'll call again. And Putin agrees. So this is now the model that I would use to for this Eastern Front line. So this is Eastern Front. I'm going to erase a little bit because I want to add some. I'm going to erase this line here. That's okay. Um, I want to add some. I want to add the Western Front here as well. Western Front. So so that's July 18 to I'm not sure if it was 18 or 17 of December. So July 18, Elder Terry primarily uses July 18. I would like to bookmark it. So I have lined up the Sunday Law waymark of Elder Terry's studies, the Western Front, with or I have lined up my line, sorry, with Elder Terry's study, with Elder Terry's waymark of the Sunday Law. Because I had 2025 here before. And I want to explain why. I'm not sure if that is a complete or I want to explain why I moved to 2024, to July 2024. I think there were two misconceptions that I had in regard to the time, or in regard to the models that we used. So first of all, so I'm going to box this. If we're going to say these two, three, but no, let me make it a little smaller. Otherwise, it's not going to fit. So reason number one. So this is 2021. So the model that I had in mind, and I think was the foundation. I did not actively think about that, of course, but now looking back, the original line that I had, where I expected the Sunday Law on 2025, I think was also founded on a model that was something like this. So we have the agitation here. And then we have, well, a national agitation, which will lead into Sunday Law. So a national agitation that leads to Sunday Law. So in the past, Elder Jeff would say, Sunday Law is there, the test will be there. So in my mind, when Elder Tess introduced her model, she said, no, the test is actually not here, the test is actually here. It's actually at Exeter. Exeter is where you can see the test. The test is taking place at Exeter, and Sunday Law is just a demonstration of what you actually already decided here. I think even Elder Tess has studies where she says that the many that are overthrown in the Sunday Law time period, the many that are overthrown is happening here. So I think that is the model that I had in mind. So we have a national agitation with a test, Sunday law test, and then we have a worldwide agitation with a Sunday law, again, worldwide Sunday law. Or let me just call it, because this is the old model, I wasn't so much thinking in those terms, just closer probation. Where you also can see here is the loud cry, and the loud cry was here. And it was not for America, it was for the whole world before probation closes. So that is that's the model that I've been using, I guess, to come to my original idea. And that's why I believe that here, that's why I think I went from that Sunday law needed to be something significant national also, and it should have been something not only in the Republican Party, and it should have been a test. I think those elements have contributed to my original model. So there's a second reason. I'll go there in a second, because I want to illustrate why this was what I understand it to be now. And I think Elder Terry has done this, and now I'm going to repeat her. So this is reason number one. So so 2021, this time period is the agitation, national agitation, national agitation, and that leads to national Sunday law. And national Sunday law is just a beginning of a national Sunday law test, or a national Sunday law message, which leads to worldwide Sunday law waymark, but that waymark is only the beginning of a worldwide Sunday law testing message and a test. So, and I should say, well, maybe I should do it a little different. It's the same thing, but so you have here a worldwide agitation. And there is a worldwide Sunday law test in this time period. So national, worldwide. And I in my understanding, original understanding, this was all fit into these waymarks within these two dispensations. And then I think I came into the problem, and that's also part of my second reason. Let me combine the two. So the old understanding was that the USA is one, or the other thing is the dragon is this one thing, is national. So in my mind, and I think this is also well explained by Elder Terry in her recent studies, is that originally I think we as a movement have thought that the dragon would come, no, let me say, America would change from a lamb-like beast to a dragon. So you first have the lamb-like beast, and then at some point it will speak as a dragon. So America is always one. It is either a lamb or it is a dragon. And there comes a point where it will speak as a dragon. It will be this dragon. But America is one as a whole. And Elder Terry has now demonstrated, she says, the USA is two. It's divided. It is from the beginning. The USA, there was a lamb-like element and a dragon element within the United States constantly from the beginning. That's the other thing that I wanted to. So the dragon is not something that pops up at some point at the end of the world where, well, then America will be the dragon. It will be the lamb all the time, and then it will be a dragon as a nation, as a whole. Now the dragon is there from the beginning. It is restrained, but it is a power, it is visible from the beginning. It is something within the United States. And that concept, I think, that realization was another element where I realized, or that concept was something where I realized the dragon is not necessarily national, or it is not national. It is actually something within the United States. And Elder Terry and Elder Parminder have been teaching recently that the dragon is Seventh Kingdom, the rise of the new Republican Party. It's an element within the United States, and I always had the problem, like, how can the image of the beast be just the Republican Party, just one small part of politics, just one party within the United States? In July, it doesn't even have power. It's not national, because that's what I expected to see. It must be something national, and it should be explained because of this concept, that this is a national test. In the national agitation time period, I expected a national test, and also this element where the USA was one in my mind, and the dragon was one in my mind, national. Well, in reality, the USA was divided from the beginning. The lamb and the dragon were restraining or balancing each other out, and the lamb was restraining the dragon. We have come to a point now where the lamb died. Basically, there was shipwreck, and the dragon is fully, the image is set up completely, and that we can see. The dragon we can see clearly in this time in July there. So these are the two. There's more, I think, but these are the two primary elements that have brought me to the realization, like, all right, I can see July now. A little late. But nevertheless, the two reasons. So that's why I'm saying 2024 July, and I've added December there as the what's it called? The college, the electoral college voting. So here actually the official, here it was officially decided by the institution that Donald Trump would become the president. So what had the crowning of the Republican Party and the crowning, you could say, as a national president, all in the same year. So we have here also a Exeter, we have a Concord, we have a Boston. I'll write them down shortly how I see them. So this is 30th of May. This is also the date that Elder Terry marks, 30th of May. It's the hush money court case of Donald Trump, where we see the Republicans blindly supporting Donald Trump, even into the court of into this court case. I want to mark the bookend the beginning with March 6th. Yeah, 6th of March. So the 6th of March is the day where Nikki Haley, one of the other Republican candidates that were running for the presidency, or running to become the candidate in the primaries. Nikki Haley was the one that stepped down. So there were, I think, 5 or 6 Republican candidates running in the primaries. Nikki Haley was the last one standing. The others were already, they dropped out of the race because they did not have enough votes. Nikki Haley was the last one standing. And on the 6th of March, she dropped out as well. She said, I'm no longer running. So on the 6th of March, Donald Trump was the only candidate still standing for the Republican Party. So we knew what would happen at July 18. So you have the 6th of March, you can see Donald Trump as the only candidate standing. And we can see on the 30th of May that the Republicans blindly support him. So that was, I would say, a mini version of what you can see here in July 18, where Donald Trump was the only candidate and was blindly supported first in July and later in November and December. No matter what. So they voted him in and they supported him no matter what. I'll go back to Concord, 24th of June. This is when Roe v. Wade was overturned. 1 second. So I'll mark here 15th of November. This is the day where Donald Trump announces that he runs for president, or runs for president. He wants to be a Republican candidate. So I should perhaps go back to January 6th first. January 6th. We see Trump trying to take the throne, so to speak, the illegal way, in a rebellious way, that fails. So 2021 is the year where you can't really see, where Republicans openly doubt how do you say that? The Republicans openly discuss whether they want to continue with Trump. Well, Elder Terry has explained that in her studies very well, with Stephen Miller, who is in the back, is going to organize all the funding, all the finances to be able to support Trump, continue to support him, because he believes that Trump needs to become president again. So we see that happening here. We can't see that here. We can't really see the rise of Trumpism in in this year, but that's 2021 marks the beginning of the rise of Trumpism, of the King of the North, internally. But you can't really see it. It's a Boston. So I'll write down the rise of Trumpism, invisible. So now we can see the rise of Trumpism here. It starts with overturning of Roe v. Wade, which is, of course, one of the things that supports the Trumpism ideology. And on the 15th of November, we can see actually Trump announcing that he's going to run for president again. I also want to highlight August 19. So that is somewhere here in the middle, August 19. Because this increase of knowledge is also a harvest, is also a death decree. And a death decree, 24th of June, the overturning of Roe v. Wade, we can see as a death decree. Many women suffer and die because of what has happened here by the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And it is suggested that on the 19th of August, the first woman died because of this law, the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And her name is Amber Thurman. That is August 19. She died. Maybe Google her name and read about it. But she died because the hospital didn't want to help her, basically, in the state where she lived, because of complications with her pregnancy. And it is suggested that she was one of the first dying because of the overturning of Roe v. Wade. So we can see the death decree here clearly. It's an Amber Thurman. It's also an Amber because in the same time period we also had Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, the court case of Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. I think it was April to June. So there was another Amber in this time period. So we can see the rise of Trumpism. We can see the rise of Trumpism at the Boston. Now we can see the rise of Trumpism. See it. So in 2024, in March to May, Trump is the only candidate and he is blindly supported. Only candidate. Blindly supported. And here, Trump is crowned. And it also is the beginning of a new Boston, and the agitation of the worldwide Sunday law begins, but it's still rather invisible. But that will start at the next waymark. I also want to line this up with internal movement, if I'm allowed to continue, because I realize I'm over time. Or shall we perhaps have a break and then I'll continue my story and then have Q&A, because it's getting a little late, I guess. What do we prefer? Have a short break?
If it's okay with everyone, we can have a 10-minute break and then Arjan can pick up.
Yes. All right. So let me shortly review what we did. We went to the 2021 to National Sunday Law dispensation, but before that we looked at what happened before 2021. Before 2021, what I wanted to highlight is the dynamic where Russia was actually in a dominant position and America in a relatively weak position. And 2021 was the turning point where you could see America rise again, and you can see Russia fall, the beginning of that. I wanted to highlight that period before 2021 and see that 2021 is a turning point in this dynamic. Then we went into the Eastern Front line. We saw 2021 as the turning point. We saw 2022 as the year where the world realized that 2021 was a turning point, so to speak, where the world realized that Joe Biden was right. We see a Concord, we see a 273, we see a world looking back to 2021 and giving credits to what has happened here. So characteristics that we can fit on this waymark, we can see actually happening in the world. We also can see the problem now. We can see the problem that needs to be solved, which wasn't so visible here at Boston. And the problem is now going to be solved. Orban and Trump make a plan, or plans are made to start a ceasefire and negotiations, peace talks. And that was introduced here in July to November, where first Orban and then Trump go to Putin and say, we're going to talk, we're going to solve this for you. Which is, of course, a loss for the King of the South already. If you agree that your greatest enemy is actually going to solve your problem, you basically give in. You're the loser. So that was the Eastern Front, and I wanted to line that up with the Western Front, and I also, in the next hour, I want to add the internal movement line to this story. And then we have everything a little together, and we can have a Q&A session and have a little discussion about the details. So before we go to our second hour, let's close this one, have a short break. I'll close with prayer. Dear Lord, I want to thank you for the opportunity you've given me to present this morning. There was a lot of information. It was a long hour, almost 1.5. I thank you for the light you have given us as a movement, and the light that has been shining for so many years, and that we can build upon what we have already received. Thank you for the fact that we are living in this time. It's not an easy time, but it's the time, Lord, where all the prophets have looked forward to. They look forward to see and understand this time, the time we are living in. And I pray, Lord, that you open our eyes and help us to understand it as we live amidst and among it. Pray that you bless us these 10 minutes and refresh us as we come back. In Jesus' name we pray and we thank you. Amen.